Let's imagine a scenario here. You make delicious cupcakes. We always use that as the example. They're always the hit. Every party you go to, every time you arrive, your friends, your family, everyone is stoked. You got the best cupcakes ever. At least that's what they all say. Time and time again, you hear this. And you hear, eventually everyone starts saying, you should really start a business. These are awesome. These are the best. They're the greatest. So you decide to open a business. Maybe they're right. You've never really thought about starting a business. But if everyone is telling you, all your friends, all your family, everyone's telling you that they're good enough, let's give this thing a try. You do all the sexy things. Your website's dope. Your logo's dope. You spend all your money. You've got the coolest, the cutest, the dopest spot in your town. Everything is incredible, except you've got no customers. Today, we are going to discuss market demand. I'm your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business owners. Hello, humans. I am your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business. I talk with sales and HR experts, other small business owners, and anyone else that can provide you and me with information to clear our way to success. Today's topic is market demand. One of the many, many common reasons that a lot of small businesses end up not working out. It's something that is very easy to overlook. You get an idea, you've got a product, you've got a service, you've got something you're super, super stoked about, super pumped about. The research can wait, right? You don't need to do the research. But then you end up in a situation like the cupcake shop. You've got this great idea, you've got this great product, you've got everything on point, but you don't have customers. So let's look at some of the causes for the lack of customers first, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the solutions for that. So what causes that? It could just be a lack of awareness. People in your area don't know that your cupcake shop exists. They don't know your hours. They don't know where you're located. They just don't know about you. So that is a problem. It could also just be that your target customer isn't the right customer. The people you're targeting don't actually want or need your product. Maybe in this cupcake shop scenario, you've decided for some reason that you're gonna do something a little different, and your target for your cupcakes is the fitness industry. You like to work out. You think other people like you will be interested, but after a couple weeks open, you realize that your target doesn't actually indulge in cupcakes as frequently as you do. Okay, maybe there's just too much competition, too many other businesses in your town that already have cupcakes, and you haven't done enough research to differentiate. You live in a town of 20,000 people, and there's 20 coffees or 20 cupcake shops, and you decide to be the 21st. Not to say that this can't work, definitely can work, but if you don't know what the others are doing, you don't know what everyone else is providing, it's going to be a little bit difficult to set yourself apart. Or maybe you just didn't even know that there were that many others open in your area. So that's also a problem. So the first step in overcoming or avoiding this lack of market demand, we need to do some research. This isn't the fun stuff, but it's going to save you a lot of headaches down the road. So we need to do some market research. This has come up tons of times in the past with different guests, but let's start by understanding who our target customer is. Our Janice, if you've been listening for a while. You got to know your Janice. I think Lauren's episode, her first episode was, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the title. Go back, listen to that. But this will dive a little bit into that. So we got to know who they are. We need to know what their problems are. What are we solving for them? And what solutions are currently available to them? And are those solutions adequate? Are they actually solving the problems? We need to know as much about them as possible and their problems as they relate to our product or service. We need to know as much about them as possible. This will all help us kind of narrow in on our idea and determine if our idea is falling short, if our current version of our idea is falling short of what they actually need, and it can help us to determine how to adjust. It just helps identify where those gaps are in the market and how they can be filled. Okay, great. So we know who our customer is now. Now we need to validate the idea. Before we spend a ton of money on all of those things we talked about earlier, the logo, the website, the build out. Before we spend all this money, even though we know who our customer is now, we need to validate. So how do we do that? We can do some surveys. We can throw out some surveys on social media, talk to the community, get some feedback, just see what they're currently dealing with, where are their problems in the cupcake market, what are they looking for, and how do you fit into that puzzle? So you could do that on social media. You could also set up at a farmer's market or some other marketplace type event and start gathering some feedback at those. Get some surveys, do some of those types of things. Probably don't sell at that point, but maybe you can give out some samples or something like that. This is going to help us better understand or get even more information on the market and those target customers before you get started. This will help you continue to define or refine your offering and start that conversation with your potential customers. Little side note, while you're in this phase, I suggest while you're collecting all this information, while you're doing all these surveys, start gathering some emails and some contact information. If you already, when you're finally at the phase to launch, if you've got a list of potential customers already, that you can kind of blast this message out to, that is going to be super, super helpful for you. So next up, let's look at your competitors. You know who your target is. You've started to talk to that target, started to get a little bit of a better idea of who they are, what their problems are, what they're looking for, and where others are falling short. Now let's look at the others. So we need to look at the competitors. Who else is doing what you're doing? Who else is offering what you're offering or something similar? Look at their products, look at their pricing. Who are their customers? How are they marketing? All of this is going to be super, super, super helpful when you are trying to differentiate. And this is even more important if your market is super crowded. Like in this cupcake example where we've got 20 cupcake shops already, you're going to have to do something either differently or better, but you need to know what different and what better is, or you don't know what that is. So how are you going to be different if you don't know what the others are doing? Okay, so you've done all the research. Everything looks great. You know where you're differentiated. You know who your customer is. You know their problems. You know all the things. Everything looks great. The idea looks like it can work. Boom. Let's get going, right? Let's spend that money. Let's get that website. Let's get that logo. Let's do all those fun things. It's time to roll, baby. Maybe let's take one or two more steps. We're going to cover one more today. I've got a whole series. The next few videos are going to be about things like this. So But for today, let's take one last step. We've worked through this. Now, before we actually go and spend all this money and get everything moving, let's just make sure that we haven't missed anything and that there actually is demand for this product or service. So let's test it. Let's actually test the product. For the cupcake shop, we'll continue to use that example for this episode. Let's go back to the farmer's market or some other market and let's set up there for a couple months. Now, you may have to go through a couple hurdles to get to that point, depending on where you live. Like you might have to get some permits or whatever that looks like in your area. But if the plan is to open a store, let's test this thing actually before we get too far in. So set up at a market, maybe you can't get into a market, but maybe you can post some things online for like a weekly pickup or something like that. Something to test whether or not the demand is actually there. All of your research is telling you that it should be there, but is it actually? Let's test that before we get too deep in the hole. Are your sales consistent each week? Are people coming back week after week? Or are new people coming? Are you getting a bunch of people coming to your stand or placing these orders online that are telling you that a friend told them they were raving about these cupcakes and they told you just had to stop next week? Like all of those things are great indicators that you're onto something here. And during this time, continue surveying and continue collecting this information. Again, the contact information is going to be super, super helpful for when you're actually launching. But you can continue to gather some information, continue surveying, do all of those things so that you've got more information to make decisions. What needs to be adjusted? You got to be a little careful here. Like you can't take every comment and make adjustments based on a single comment. But like if you keep getting people over and over again, they're like, oh yeah, I wanted to contact you. I wanted to place that order. But it was too short notice, or the process was too difficult online, like when on your Facebook post or whatever. If there's a lot of people saying that, maybe that's something to look at. And that kind of goes for any adjustments. Like you can't just make adjustments just because a single person said something, unless you also knew that was a problem the whole time and you've just been putting it off. But again, collect that information, collect their contact information as much as you can. And that way you've got something to start off of whenever you're actually launching this thing. So none of these things are super fun. I get it. But if you put in that time early, then it's going to save you a ton of time, a ton of money. It's going to just help you later down the road. It's just important. Now, you can wing it, and there are certainly times where winging it is the only or best option, especially if you're in like a desperate situation where you get laid off and you decide you're starting your own thing. Probably not going to have time to do the research, but if you have the luxury of time, use it. It is going to save you. It will absolutely save you in the future. Whether it's more time or money, it's going to save you in some regard. If you have the time, if you're not pressed, you don't have to start right away. Just take the time, go through the steps. If you need help with any of that, like if you get stuck or it still seems too overwhelming, like reach out to another business owner that's a little further along, or has been doing it for a couple years, or email me. Like, I can help you talk through some of these things. There are people that will be willing to help you through that research phase and really through any of the phases. Like, don't skip some of these steps because they either feel too formal or like you don't need to do them. You're just starting a cupcake shop. Like, sure, that might be true. It's not necessary, but it is certainly going to help you down the road. Or whatever the reason is, if you have time, again, this is all based on the idea that you have time. And by that, I don't mean like you've got a bunch of spare time. I mean, you're not pressed to start this thing. Like, you don't have to start this thing tomorrow so that you can buy food for you and your family. Like, that is a different circumstance. But if you have the time to set this thing up, take the steps. Don't make up reasons why you don't need to. It is going to help you. Reach out to me or to somebody else. They'll be able to help you. Okay. That's it for today. Nice and short. Nice 17-minuter. So if, like I said, there's going to be a series of these episodes just highlighting the reasons and the ways to avoid the things and the things that bring a lot of small businesses or stop a lot of small businesses from succeeding. If you found this episode helpful or any other episode helpful, share it with a friend. Help me get this information to any of the other small business owners or aspiring small business owners that could use a little bit of help. Leave a review. That's always super helpful. If you need any assistance working through this or anything else, just let me know. You can send me an email. It'll be linked down below, bradley@clearingthewaypodcast.com. Pretty easy. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Have a marvelous week, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Thanks for listening, watching, wherever you're consuming this. I'm your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business owners.